the harsh retirement reality nobody talks about. Let me ask you something. And I want you to actually think about this instead of just nodding and scrolling to the comments. Do you know how much money you need to retire? Not a vague feeling, not a number you heard your uncle mention at Thanksgiving before he pivoted to talking about crypto. The actual number. The specific figure that lets you stop working, maintain your lifestyle, and not run out of money before you run out of heartbeats. Most people don't know. And the ones who think they know are usually off by an amount that would make their future self want to travel back in time specifically to have a very serious conversation with their current self about life choices. Here's what makes this uncomfortable. Retirement isn't some distant hypothetical that only applies to people who wear orthopedic shoes. It's coming. For some of you, it's coming fast. And the gap between what the average person has saved and what they actually need is so wide that when I show you the numbers today, you're either going to feel relieved that you found this out now, or you're going to feel a very specific kind of panic that I need you to channel into action instead of just sitting with while stress eating whatever's in your kitchen. Either way, you need to see this. I'm Naomi, this is my channel, and today we're talking about the retirement reality that the financial industry mentions quietly, in small print, at the bottom of a page nobody reads. Let's get into it. Let's start with where people actually are. Because before we talk about where you need to be, you need to understand what's normal right now. And what's normal is genuinely alarming, like hide under a blanket alarming. The median retirement savings for Americans between 55 and 64, the people who are within 10 years of traditional retirement age, is roughly $185,000. The mean is higher because a small number of very wealthy people pull the average up. But the median, the number that represents the actual middle of the population, the person who is neither doing great nor doing terribly, is $185,000. For people in their late 40s and early 50s, it drops to around $130,000. For people in their 30s, the median is closer to $45,000. And for roughly a quarter of Americans over 55, the retirement savings number is zero. Not low, not a little embarrassing, zero. As in the same amount currently sitting in my savings account after I decided to redo my kitchen last spring. We don't talk about that. Now here is where the panic starts to become appropriate, because $185,000 sounds like a lot of money until you understand what retirement actually costs. And that's exactly what we're about to get into. The most widely used framework for understanding how much you can safely withdraw from retirement savings is called the 4% rule. William Bengen, a financial advisor who clearly had a gift for math and a talent for delivering bad news professionally, developed it in 1994. He studied historical market returns and determined that retirees could withdraw 4% of their portfolio annually with a very low probability of running out of money over a 30-year retirement. So let's do that math on the median savings. Get comfortable. Or actually don't, because this might make comfort difficult. 4% of $185,000 is $7,400 per year. That's $616 a month from savings. Now add Social Security. The average Social Security benefit in the United States is currently around $1,900 a month. So the median near-retirement American is looking at a combined retirement income of roughly $2,500 a month, $30,000 a year. The MIT Living Wage Calculator estimates that a single adult needs roughly $40,000 to $50,000 per year to cover basic living expenses in most parts of the country. Not comfortably, basically. We're talking housing, food, transportation, healthcare, and the occasional treat that isn't a financial crime against your future self. So the average retirement income for the median American doesn't cover basic living expenses. That's not me being dramatic. That's just what happens when you do the arithmetic. The math does not care about your feelings. The math simply arrives on schedule with its little clipboard and shows you the number. Now let me tell you what you actually need. And I want you to hear this not as a judgment, but as information, because information is the only thing that lets you make different decisions going forward. Most financial planners use a rule of thumb that you need to replace about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income annually to maintain a comparable lifestyle. Healthcare costs tend to rise in retirement. Travel and leisure often increase in the early years when you finally have the time to do all the things you said you'd do when you had the time. The idea that retirement is cheap is largely a myth for people who want to actually enjoy it rather than just survive it. So if you currently live on $70,000 a year, you need $49,000 to $56,000 in annual retirement income. Using the 4% rule, that means you need a portfolio of roughly $1.2 million to $1.4 million to sustain that income from savings alone, not including Social Security. If you live on $90,000 a year, you're looking at needing $1.6 million to $1.8 million saved. If you live on $120,000, which is not an unusual household income for dual-income families in most major cities, you need somewhere between $2 million and $2.4 million in retirement savings to maintain that lifestyle. These numbers feel large because they are large, and most people have never seen them written down explicitly. The financial industry tends to talk about retirement in terms of contribution percentages and account types rather than the actual destination number, because the destination number is scary. And scared people sometimes disengage entirely, close the browser tab, make a snack, and come back to Netflix like the information didn't happen. But I'd rather you be scared and informed than comfortable and heading toward a cliff at 65 miles an hour with no brakes. Wade Pfau, one of the most respected retirement researchers in the country, has spent years studying what he calls the retirement income challenge. His work builds on the 4% rule, but adds a layer of reality that most people miss entirely. The rule was developed using historical data that included exceptional long-term market returns. In a lower return environment, which many economists believe we are currently in or entering, the safe withdrawal rate may need to be closer to 3% to 3.5%. Drop the withdrawal rate from 4% to 3%, and the math changes significantly. Now your $185,000 produces $5,550 a year instead of $7,400. And the portfolio you need to generate $50,000 annually grows from $1.25 million to nearly $1.67 million. The goalposts move, and they do not move in your favor. They never move in your favor. It's extremely rude. David Bach, who wrote The Automatic Millionaire, calls this the latte factor in reverse. The small decisions that seemed inconsequential over decades, the years you didn't contribute to your 401k because you were going to start next year, the raises that got completely absorbed into lifestyle upgrades before you could catch them, the 5 years you kept everything in cash because the market felt uncertain, and honestly a little aggressive, those small decisions compound into enormous deficits that arrive right on schedule at retirement age, regardless of your feelings about them. The deficit doesn't care that you had a lot going on. It just shows up. Let me talk about healthcare, because this is the part of the retirement conversation that gets a single vague sentence in most financial planning content, and then everyone moves on, which is wild to me because this is the part that actually destroys people's plans. Fidelity Investments releases an annual estimate of healthcare costs in retirement. Their most recent estimate suggests that a 65-year-old couple retiring today will need approximately $315,000 in savings dedicated specifically to healthcare costs throughout retirement. Not total retirement savings, healthcare specifically, on top of everything else. As a bonus surprise, congratulations on retiring, here's a $315,000 bill for the privilege of not dying cheaply. And that number assumes Medicare coverage starting at 65. If you want to retire before 65, which a lot of people do because they are tired and they have earned it, you're paying for private health insurance during the gap years. Depending on your age, health status, and state, that can run anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a month or more per person. For a couple retiring at 60%, that's potentially 5 years of private insurance costing $24,000 to $36,000 annually before Medicare enters the chat. Suze Orman, who has been talking about retirement realities for decades and has the energy of someone who genuinely cannot believe we're still having this conversation, makes a point that I think more people need to hear. She says the number one financial destroyer of retirement plans in America isn't bad investments or market crashes. It's unexpected healthcare costs hitting people who plan for everything except the thing that was most statistically likely to actually happen. Plan for healthcare, specifically, with a real number built into your real retirement calculation. Not a vibe, a number. Now let me talk about something that almost nobody addresses directly in the retirement conversation: longevity risk. which sounds like a finance term, but is really just a polite way of saying, what if you live a very long time and run out of money? Or people are living longer. In 1960, the average American life expectancy was about 70 years. Today, it's approaching 79. And those are averages, which means a significant portion of the population is living into their late 80s and 90s. A 65-year-old woman today has roughly a 50% chance of living past 85. A couple both age 65 has about a 50% chance that at least one of them lives past 90. The 4% rule was designed for a 30-year retirement. A 30-year retirement means retiring at 65 and planning through 95. That's already optimistic. But if you retire at 60, you need the money to last 35 years. If you retire at 55, which some of you are planning, you need 40 years of financial coverage from your savings. Every additional year of retirement requires more savings, lower withdrawal rates, or a willingness to dramatically reduce your lifestyle at some point during retirement. None of those options are particularly fun. The math doesn't care how tired you are. It doesn't care that you deserve a break. It simply requires that the money outlast you, and it will enforce this requirement whether or not you prepared for it. Morgan Housel, in The Psychology of Money, talks about financial endurance. He argues that the ability to stay financially stable over a very long time, through market crashes, unexpected expenses, and the long, unpredictable tail of a longer-than-expected life, is more important than any individual investment decision you'll ever make. You don't need to be a genius. You need to last. And lasting requires more cushion than most people build because most people plan for the life they expect rather than the longer one they might actually get. Okay, so what do you actually do with all of this? Because I didn't come here just to ruin your Tuesday. I came with the information and the response to it because that's how we operate around here. First, calculate your number, not a vague goal that lives in the back of your mind next to the resolution to drink more water. The specific number. Take your current annual spending, multiply by 0.75 to get your estimated retirement spending, and then multiply that by 25 to get the portfolio size the 4% rule requires. Write it down somewhere you will actually see it. The number needs to be real before you can make decisions that move you toward it. Second, calculate the gap. Compare your number to what you currently have saved. The gap is not a reason to spiral, it's a project. Projects have steps. Steps can be started today, even if today already has a lot going on. Third, increase your contribution rate immediately. J.L. Collins in The Simple Path to Wealth argues that the savings rate is the single most powerful variable in retirement planning. More powerful than investment returns, more powerful than account selection, more powerful than whether the market is doing that concerning thing it does sometimes. The percentage of your income you save and invest determines the trajectory of your financial life more than anything else. If you're saving 5%, the math produces one outcome. If you save 20%, the math produces a fundamentally different life. Same income, completely different destination. Fourth, delay claiming Social Security if at all possible. For every year you delay past 62, your benefit increases. Waiting from 62 to 70 can increase your monthly benefit by as much as 76%. 76%. From the same program, just by waiting. For a couple where one person has high lifetime earnings, delaying that person's claim can mean tens of thousands of additional dollars across retirement. This is one of the most financially significant decisions most people will ever make, and most people make it without doing any math whatsoever. They just claim it when they hit 62 because the money is there and money is nice. Do the math first, then decide. Fifth, take healthcare seriously as its own budget line right now. Open a health savings account if you're eligible. HSA contributions are tax deductible, they grow tax-free, and they withdraw tax-free for medical expenses. It is the only triple tax advantaged account in the entire American financial system. Ramit Sethi calls it the holy grail of retirement accounts, and honestly, that's not hyperbole. It's just accurate. If you have access to one and you're not using it, you are leaving a genuinely remarkable deal sitting on the table. Here's the honest summary, and I want you to hear it clearly without immediately going to make a snack. The average American is not on track for retirement, not even close. The gap between median savings and what retirement actually requires is enormous, and it grows every year that nothing changes. This is true. The numbers say so. The numbers are not trying to be mean. They're just numbers. But here is what is also true. The people who understand this gap, while they still have time to do something about it, are in a completely different position than the people who discover it at 63, with 2 years left to work and a very uncomfortable conversation ahead of them. Information is the asset. Awareness is the starting point. The decisions that follow are what determine whether this information helped you or just briefly stressed you out. You are not doomed by where you are today. You are shaped by what you decide to do starting from today. The retirement you want is a specific number. That number is reachable through specific decisions made consistently over time. None of it requires genius. None of it requires perfect market timing or a windfall or knowing someone. It requires looking at the reality clearly, which you just did, and then refusing to look away and go back to pretending the number doesn't exist. Most people look away. That's why the median savings number is $185,000 when the required number is 10 times that. You don't have to be most people. You just have to be the person who watched this video and actually did something with it. If this helped you see something more clearly, share it with someone who needs to hear it, even if they don't want to. Subscribe because this is the kind of conversation I have every single week on this channel. And I'll see you in the next one.